since the Bills and Ravens are playing against each other, does the quarterback who wins that game, should we kind of all agree that they should get the MVP this year?
Only if the Ravens win.
Welcome back to the James and Dame Show. I'm Josiah.
And I'm Will.
And welcome back to the podcast where this week we're going to go over the wild card recap. And it was something this weekend, or this past weekend. I definitely got to watch most of the games to an extent. I don't know about you, Will, but most of them were pretty...
Not very close.
Pretty much a given towards a certain... Yeah, pretty close. Most of them were probably a given towards... At some point during their games, who was going to win anyway, so... Yeah. It was bound to happen.
It was a bunch of blowouts. I think the weirdest thing is that the one game that was actually like a close, good game was the one that we got to cover, which is, not been the trend for most of the year. So that was surprising, but I will not complain.
Nope. Now we can just pray that the Bills and Ravens game will live up to that standard too.
I'm hoping, or that the Ravens will just, but we'll see.
You don't want to lose any more of your years off your life, I guess. I guess that's fair. But
I'd prefer not.
I guess to just kind of get into this, we could just start talking about the first wildcard game, the Chargers and the Texans. Probably the most surprising, I'd say, out of all these games.
Maybe.
4 interceptions.
4 interceptions. Yeah, it was really not pretty from Herbert.
He has had more interceptions that game than he did the entire season, regular season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just chalk it up to, again, this isn't a team that's used to the playoffs. They're coming in, and again, they played pretty well throughout the year. And, good coach in Harbaugh, but, again, it's a team that's not used to the playoffs, and that's something you come in, you all sort of not as a not super talented team, and that's going to show in the playoffs. You don't just get the benefit of the doubt where coaching is the only thing that can win you a game. This is where talent actually needs to be there a little bit more. You actually need talent to win games rather than coaching can kind of just carry you to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. This is true. And as much as I like Harbaugh, that wasn't enough to get over the hump. And to see the Texans offense just play lights out for most of that game was kind of impressive. Especially the defense for the Texans really took a step.
Yeah,
absolutely. They did a lot. They did a lot better.
Part of it's the Chargers fell behind, and then they were just doing way too much to try and get back in that game, and I think that's what dug them into a deeper hole. Because they're just like they're a run first team, or they should be based off of their roster, but. They just kept digging themselves in a hole by keep forcing the ball to go through Justin Herbert. And it worked to an extent where you had Ladd McConkey had a really good day, but I think was too forced. And again, there's some development that still needs to go on with Herbert because he's not really had a real coach. And so this is going to be his first chance to actually learn. So I'm more interested to see what they do in the coming years. And again, I still think if you're a Chargers fan, this is still a win for the year. As bitter as an end as it is, I still think you should be
you weren't
happy.
expected to do well. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
They were not.
This season was supposed to be a rebuild year, especially with Harbaugh coming in and a lot of your key pieces moving on from the previous year. That was just bound to happen. But there's a couple teams this year that should have just been a rebuilding year ended up making farther than they should have been. So Chargers were one of them. So they can say that this year wasn't that big of a loss, but it was a turnaround to some extent. But yeah.
Hmm.
Should we go on to the favorite game of the week, according to you?
The favorite game?
The favorite.
Are we talking the Ravens? Is that why?
Yes, the
Oh.
favorite game. You know, when your Ravens beat the Steelers.
I mean, it was pretty nice, but I can't say I'm super surprised. I mean, Steelers put up 14 in the second half, but they were also like they weren't technically garbage time because they were third quarter touchdowns, but they just felt like garbage time because it just seemed lazy on the Ravens defense. Um,
Yeah, I did see a little bit of that.
Up 21-0 at half, they kind of just took a commanding lead early, and the Steelers' offense just really didn't do a whole lot. So defense wasn't able to cool them off. I think T.J. Watt and Cameron Hayward both sustained injuries, who are like two of the biggest veterans they have on that defense, and both of them sustained injuries. Both still returned, but kind of slowed them down. Both were, I think, one was to end the half. Cameron Hayward at the end of the first half, and TJ towards or earlier in the second half. But I don't know. It just, I mean, I think it's about what everyone expected, just with how the Steelers had been playing and how they have played in the playoffs. And the Ravens are not a team to be taken lightly, especially
No, they are not.
with Derrick Henry back there, who had himself a pretty good game as well.
Yeah, Jackson and Henry were running all over that team. Henry with a couple good stiff arms during that game. That was good to see. Some things to just kind of point out from the Steelers side of things, because I've been saying it all year. That offense just never sparked any hope for me just watching that. So
Nope.
I'm just going to come out and say Tomlin is a hack. He has not won a playoff game in so long. He's 0-6 in the last 6 playoff games he's been coaching. T.J. Watt hasn't had a playoff win yet. That's how bad it is.
That's an interesting stat.
And according to a statistics sheet, Steelers were outscored 73-0 in the first quarter for the last 6 playoff games. So I don't know what else I should point out. I mean, if that doesn't tell you how inept the Steelers are when they get to the playoffs, then I don't know what does. Because they've just kind of settled for mediocrity, and nothing's going to change while Tomlin's there. They're in a spot where they're not going to get to the Super Bowl, but they're not going to get like any great talent in the draft because they're kind of in the middle of the pack right now. It's just not looking pretty for them, and nothing's going to change unless Tomlin either leaves or they just have a different approach to things. I don't know what they're going to do now, but
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of it again is they still keep putting together a. Their defenses are always good, but their offenses have been mediocre at best since Ben Roethlisberger left. And I mean, obviously, a part of it's quarterback play and stuff, and they still need to find that. But like again, I don't completely put it on Tomlin because this team wasn't supposed to be very good this year. They just dragged themselves to a winning record as they usually do, and
yeah,
it's mostly
and I don't know if
it's mostly I don't know, they just don't have the talent around them, where I think honestly some of this should be looked at more towards like the GM, who they're bringing. Like I think it goes towards the GM because it's what players are you bringing in and what offensive coordinator are you bringing in. I mean, their offensive coordinator was Arthur Smith, who was like why is this your signing here? Your offense is not super talented. You don't have your one receiver that is very good. Your one good receiver has attitude issues, and that affects how he plays. And other than that, you don't have that much. So I think a lot more should be pointed towards the GM than anything.
yeah, basically. I don't know. It's it's really, they're in purgatory right now. That's what the Steelers are in. And I also found that, was it TJ Watt hasn't had a sack, tackle, or any like other big defensive stats in like, what was it, like 170 to 190 snaps, consecutive snaps. So TJ Watt has not been doing anything either. So it's been kind of a down year for TJ Watt in general as well, because he has not been putting up a lot of numbers recently.
That would line up with kind of the Steelers' downfall as well, because that would go back probably 4 or 5 games, I would think. I think is how that would line up.
Yeah.
Depending on, the snaps per game. But, like, looking at that production, that kind of goes back to just their poor performing weeks and just kind of how they closed it out. And, I mean, there's part of it where I kind of can see it being pointed towards Tomlin is you can point it towards preparation for playoffs. You can point it towards maybe the attitude. It's hard to say what the issue is when you don't get to take a look in the locker room and see what the issue is, because we just see how they play on the field, but there's so many things that go into performance. And like we've mentioned, the offense hasn't been good either. But, I mean, TJ Watt not playing well, that's just like, why is that the case? He's your best player, and he hasn't been performing lately. Is it a coaching thing? Is it he's in a slump? Is it just morale? Like, what is it? So I think that's some questions that are largely internal that need to be answered, that you can't really tell from the outside.
He wants to be a part of the solution. That's what he's stated over the years, that he wants to continue to be a Steeler. But we'll see what kind of happens in the next couple of years and see how it kind of shakes out. But we can move on to Broncos and Bills. There's not much really to talk about here, I would say.
No, I mean, this game was close maybe at the beginning. The first half was pretty interesting, but after that, the defense of the Broncos kept it close in the first half after the offense only scored on the first drive. Offense just didn't show up for 3 quarters, and defense eventually started letting up in the second half. So it's just a case of...
They were getting tired.
I mean, yeah, I'll just say that the Broncos are kind of in the same boat as the Chargers, where you overperformed and were well coached for most of the year, but with a lack of talent in certain places in your roster, this is just kind of bound to happen, and you should just be happy with the fact that you made the playoffs, because your roster is not really built to be this good. It's not good enough to really make a push right now, I would say. But, you got a lot to be happy about, so.
That's just kind of reality for them. And I'd say Broncos fans, just be happy that, like you said, Will, just be happy that you made it. I mean, Bo Nix looks very promising. He's got a lot of room to develop, but he definitely has the potential. We'll see what Sean Payton does. He can be a great coach at times. I'm a little concerned about what his attitude will be like towards Bo Nix.
I mean, it seems pretty good at the moment.
He seems pretty good at the moment, but I'm just more concerned about like how they're going to approach this offseason and how they're going to develop him even more and see what Sean Payton does. But the Broncos defense, great. Like, they don't, like, obviously the more the merrier, obviously, especially with key defensive pieces, but they were pretty good this year, and that's probably why they got to the playoffs as far as they won as many games as they did, was because of that defense and a little bit of that offense. Once Bo Nix just has reliable receivers and a couple other key pieces, I think he's basically set. So,
if you could get some good receivers, God, he might.
He might be good. He might be good. We'll see. Although the funny thing is that I don't know if you saw this live. I did. The ref going over to Josh Allen on the sideline and telling him to stop yelling at him because he didn't get his call.
I did not see that. That's funny.
There's a clip online that's been circling around, basically saying that either the ref was just being stubborn, or oh my goodness, there's rigging involved. One of the two, but I thought it was just funny because I know for a fact that ref was just telling him to be quiet. But yeah.
Yeah.
Now here's a game.
Yeah, I mean, we mostly talked about the Broncos. Just wanted to touch on the Bills. They mostly just came out and ran the ball well, and that was kind of what helped them win that game. Especially
James Cook
in the
cooked.
second half they were controlled the game really well. And I mean, if they had done that the whole game, this might have been like much uglier. But they did a good job of controlling the game in the second half, and a lot of props to them. The run game was good. Allen didn't have to do too much. Still came away with some pretty solid numbers though. And again, like you mentioned, the defense for the Bills did pretty good as well. So it's just an all around good win, especially that second half. You come away feeling really good, I feel like. So
Indeed. Now, I'm curious to see what you think of this game. Packers and Eagles. I don't know how to feel about this game, mostly because of how, like, it was close for a while, but towards the end the Eagles pulled away. And then it was just a situation where it was like the what if situations. So I'm curious what you have to say of this game.
this was a game. It's like it was very low scoring and defensive for the most part. Where the Eagles got out to an early lead off of the turnover that on the opening kickoff for the Packers. And it seems like ever since that happened, the Packers were playing catch up the entire time. And that kind of put Jordan Love in a position to make a lot of mistakes. It also put them just in a situation where they just were not getting stuff to work. They were making, again, like a lot of mistakes, forcing a lot, and they just couldn't get anything going against the Eagles' defense. The Eagles' defense, on the other hand, I mean, they pretty much carried them for 90% of that game. The offense didn't do a whole lot. Dallas Goedert was just about the only one who really managed to get anything going on that offense. But other than that, that offense didn't look great. The Packers defense kept them in that game, and if it wasn't for the Packers defense, that game could have been really
Very
ugly because of how that offense had played. But
yeah, it also sucks that Jordan Love was also, I wouldn't say still recovering, but he definitely still felt the injury that kind of took him out of that Chicago Green Bay Packer game, Week 18. So he was definitely feeling that. Yeah, just terrible day for offense from Packers side of the ball. I know this has been mentioned before, but Jordan Love still cannot break the Toyotathon allegations. He has a 28-2 touchdown interception ratio during Toyotathon, but a 29-28 touchdown interception ratio when the Toyotathon is not on. That is the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
it's like Kyler Murray
hilarious.
after Call of Duty drops.
Yeah,
And
it's like I don't know
so
how else to
weird.
describe it than it's not even a trend. It's just, I don't know. It's just
It's-
kind of hardwired into their brains. I don't know.
It's just weird, and I think like obviously look at Kyler Murray's. His is a little bit more like you can actually put blame on it because he actually plays Call of Duty when the new Call of Duty drops. So
Yeah.
like there's a little bit of like you look at that and maybe he, does spend more time there, so maybe that is a little more cause and effect. I still think he probably plays about as much as he normally does, and it's just that, it just happens to line up because, players tend to play well at certain points in the year. But I don't know, when they line up with something else at like random like that, it's just weird. And this one, like, I don't even know how you could possibly explain a cause and effect relationship between these two, but it's so weird and funny. Uh, but
Yeah.
Eagles, yeah,
I
they got some
yeah.
potential award winners on that team, so they're gonna feel pretty good moving on and hosting next week. But we can move along, I guess.
Yeah. Just really quick. I don't know if you saw it, but AJ Brown was he was reading a book
Yes.
about motivation on the sideline when he only had one catch up to that point, which I think is a really cool thing. It kind of just shows that he's a really good team player, and he's actually, he cares about the team effort. So, just a little piece I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
that does touch a little bit just on like again how not so much like the reading the book thing was funny and people are
it was
I know
funny.
that's blowing up, but that also like you mentioned to him only having one catch up to that point, the passing game for the Eagles just was not very present. Again, Dallas Goedert were the only one really able to get anything going. Barkley moved the ball well on the ground, and again the Eagles were just playing from in front the whole time. Maybe that's why the offense didn't look as good. Maybe there's actually concerns there, but yeah, it's just it's the offense not showing up as much in a game where your defense gave you pretty much every chance to make this a blowout, and that's a credit to the Packers defense still, but
Yeah, I was about to say that Packers defense is still pretty good.
it's very good. So
and now we can, I guess, move on to the game that we live streamed. So how are we feeling about that one?
that one was God, I don't even like. I still thinking back at it. I don't know how to feel about it because it was such a close game, and it seemed like there was like hardly like little to no mistakes. I mean, disregarding penalties, like those were there and those happen, but there was Baker's one fumble, and other than that, it seemed fairly clean. I mean, again, there was the concern with the Commanders and their red zone offense. But, I mean, even when they were making mistakes, it didn't feel like there were any mistakes made. And so It was a game where they came away with a game-winning Doinkin field goal, which is just... I don't know, that was just funny. And exciting. But unfortunately for Baker... they're going to have a first-round exit this year, and I do think that the Buccaneers should look heavily at Todd Bowles and his contract remaining.
There's something that we've been talking about that a little bit. So, yeah, Todd Bowles is not really that good of a fit in Tampa Bay anymore, and I think he's just kind of stayed his welcome. So it's about time that they've kind of moved on and found a different coach.
I mean, you have consistency issues throughout the regular season. You barely win the division when it's pretty much a gimme division.
Pretty bad.
And then you also show up with a defense that doesn't look good whatsoever all year as a defensive-minded head coach. And I know I mentioned that there wasn't many big, there wasn't a lot of big plays from the Commanders, which is props to the Buccaneers defense, but the Buccaneers defense also did not really force many stops other than in that red zone, which I still think lies more on a little bit of Commanders' incompetence because the play calling was not great and a lot of stuff fell apart. So I don't think I don't think Bowles has looked good, especially this year.
No. Yeah, it's about time that they consider other options. I also kind of feel for Mike Evans. I saw his reaction to the field goal, and he was livid. I understand that, so I kind of feel bad for.
He had a good game.
Those players. Yeah, he had a great game. He caught some great passes. Was basically steamrolling Marshawn Lattimore all night too. So
he definitely had his way with them.
Yeah, but on the Commanders side, though, I think the Chicago Bears are feeling a little annoyed right now with the Commanders because they had that Hail Mary earlier in the year, and then now they had the doink that went in. So the Bears are probably feeling extra salty because that's Jaden Daniels is what the Bears thought Caleb Williams was going to do with that offense, with the Bears offense.
Yeah, but I also think part of it is this is kind of what we've been expecting this ever since the Commanders, had that choice. We all thought they were gonna go Jaden Daniels because of Cliff Kingsbury, and surprise, you go Jaden Daniels, and he works well with Cliff Kingsbury. And I think this is like a situation last year with C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, where Daniels just works because he's put in a good situation, not because he's just the better quarterback. And I think he is a good quarterback. I think there's a lot of good quarterbacks, but I think Daniels does really well because he's in a very good system for him. So, I mean, a lot of good stuff coming from the Commanders, and again, I think they're kind of playing with house money this year. Again, rookie quarterback does not often win playoff games. That's not it's not super common, but that's also what the Commanders' first playoff win since 2006.
Yep, it was a road game too.
I was on the road, which is not an easy way to do it.
Yeah. No, and I kind of feel for Gonzalez too, because I know you were watching it as well, but he was stressed when he was lining up for that game-winning field goal.
Yeah, he
was constantly trying to adjust his hair, trying to put his helmet on. Like, nope, that's not how it works.
Could not get his hair right. He's like, I gotta look good. Yeah, but it was a good game. It was, I think, the only good game of Wild Card Weekend.
Yeah, and before I forget, shout out to Tom Grassi again. It was great seeing him and his Grassi posse back on our live stream again. So, to anyone who's now a new subscriber, welcome to the channel. We're glad to have you.
Yes, welcome indeed.
I thought something happened over there.
Should we move on to this last game?
Yes. I have a few points, but I'll let you start with yours.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna chalk it up to the Vikings O-line and Sam Darnold's just had a very, very bad day. And Rams came in. They played well. I try not to take too much of that away from them, but the way the Vikings were playing was so below their pay grade that I don't know what it was, but the day or two leading up, I was like, I don't know why, but I feel like the Vikings are fraudulent this year. They looked so legit all year until that last week, and I'm like, are they? You got a quarterback in Sam Darnold who hasn't been to the playoffs. He's been on bad teams his entire career. His first chance here, he played well with, players that make it really easy and a coach that makes it really easy. But again, this is a situation where you actually have to be a good player. You can't just everyone's a good player in the playoffs, so you have to kind of match up to that. And he wasn't ready. O-line did not do him a lot of favors. Rams defense had a field day, and Vikings just didn't play well.
No, he was seeing ghosts again. That's what he was seeing. So, JJ McCarthy is licking his chops on the sideline too. What was it? I did see that the Vikings have only lost to the Rams and Lions, and it was twice each. So that's where their 4 losses were this season.
That's
which is fair. It's fair.
Good teams. Man, imagine if the Vikings had any other seed, or had to play literally anyone else. Maybe they would have made the Super Bowl if they didn't have to play the Rams or the Lions. Who knows? Maybe it's just
Rams are kind of a dark horse right now.
They looked good. They looked pretty good. That defense is pretty scary. for as young as they are.
Especially scary, as in, let me jump over this lineman to just fall on top of Sam Darnold. Please tell me you saw that clip where, I don't know who it was, but one of the defensive linemen from the Rams, like, got over this person and then just like I don't know how else to describe it, but like a jump on top of Sam Darnold, like a, I don't know, FNAF jump scare, if you want to call it that. I thought it was kind of funny. Every time I see that, I see, wee! That's all I hear.
Yeah.
What is it? Rams, pretty good strip sack, fumble return during that game. That was great to see that. I want to tell you this because I saw this somewhere. I don't know if you heard this yet.
Oh.
So you know Colin Cowherd, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He went on air and said that he trusted Sam Darnold more than Lamar Jackson in the playoffs.
I mean, okay, I can see that you're like, Lamar hasn't done anything, or he's not done nothing. He hasn't done enough, and there's concerns there. And I can see that you look at Sam Darnold, it's like it's his first real chance. But you shouldn't have that much trust because he hasn't proven anything. He's unproven.
Yeah.
So maybe if you think he could be better, I could see that, but trusting him more when he hasn't played in the playoffs,
I don't know about that.
That just doesn't. This is someone who does this on national TV, and I'm not gonna bash him at all, but that's just. That's an interesting take.
Reaching. It's reaching a little bit. I'll say that.
It's a bit of a reach.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to pull from that. I know I had a few things.
No, that's basically it.
Around the league that I wanted to pitch. Really only like two things. One small thing being Deontay Johnson, who was a few weeks ago was released from the Ravens after he was traded to the Ravens from the Panthers. Released by the Ravens, and he was on the Texans for, I believe it was 2 weeks, and he has now been released by the Texans. So it looks like there might be something up with Deontay Johnson. What can we say except that Steelers receivers just whatever, they're a problem.
Yeah, they don't do well once they I don't know, when they return, I guess, or go somewhere else.
They have attitude problems while they're there too. Like, it's just, you got Juju, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Antonio Brown. Like, it's, I don't know, it's just so weird. But yeah, one last thing before going to power rankings was, I'm sure you noticed it because we had mentioned it, and I think it was done in the funniest fashion, is that it does not look like Mike McCarthy will be returning to the Cowboys. And the reason why I think it's the funniest fashion isn't that he said, it wasn't that Jerry Jones fired him or that Mike McCarthy said he didn't want to come back. It's that they couldn't get a deal done in time and his contract expired, so he's now a free agent coach.
And they also missed on the chance to. They also missed on the opportunity to interview Ben Johnson. So they're going to wait. They're going to have to wait.
I mean, I'm sure they'll be able to catch him at some point, but they are behind the ball. They're behind the ball for sure because.
Way behind.
I mean, this is why teams make that move earlier. Look at literally any of the other teams. It's every other team has mostly interviewed at least a solid amount of their coaches. I think Mark McCarthy is going to be kind of in the works with some teams. Again, the Bears, I think there's some expectation that they'll interview him at least because they requested to talk to him just to be denied. Now he's free, so I'm sure that the Bears will look at him, but I'm sure
Yeah.
he'll get talked around. If he goes somewhere, I'm gonna laugh. If he manages a
I mean,
head coach,
it's probably inevitable. We just don't know where he's going to go.
Bears or Jets would be very funny. I will.
It would be hilarious.
Bears or Jets would be funny, but also like expected. I feel like, or if he was to go somewhere, I feel like those two.
It's pretty expected.
But yeah, what do you think where do you think Mike McCarthy might go, and who do you think the Cowboys? Who do you think is a Cowboys fit as a coach?
Let's see here. Mike McCarthy will probably go to the Jets. However, the head coach for the Cowboys, the new one, Deion Sanders has been thrown around a lot, and I don't think that would work. I don't think it would.
And
Jerry Jones wants a yes man. He wants a yes man.
He does
and
want
Deion
a yes
Sanders
man.
is not a yes man.
But
Deion Sanders is not a yes man.
We've talked about this whole Deion wants to coach his son's thing, and that's not going to happen in Dallas. At least not Shadur. He's not going to land in Dallas. Maybe they could look at getting Shiloh, but you're not getting Shadur.
That was a huge maybe.
You're not getting Shadur in Dallas. So if that's really as much of a deal breaker as it is, he's not going to Dallas. But like you mentioned, I also don't think Deion is really as much of a fit. I do think Jerry would like Deion there, but I just don't know that. I just don't know that that's gonna work. So I don't even. I kind of think Mike McCarthy is more likely to the Bears. I don't know why that fits. Maybe it's just because they reached out the hardest.
Probably.
But yeah,
Makes sense.
Who the Cowboys go for is interesting because it never feels like it's always a personality
It's not going to be the person
thing.
you expect.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be someone who. I don't think it's going to be a popular choice or one of the popular options. It's probably going to be I don't know, like Chip Kelly or something.
That'd be funny. That'd be hilarious.
I could see it. You know what? That'll be my official guess. I'll throw Chip Kelly in that conversation.
All right.
For the Cowboys head coach going forward. But yeah, that's kind of just all I wanted to touch on. Just a little bit of the news. But otherwise, we can get through these top 8 power rankings as we only have 8 teams left. So let's just get on to number 8.
All right, number 8. I have the Texans.
Yeah. I mean, I too have the Texans just because I had this conversation with there's a few teams, because there weren't a lot of close games, but there were a few teams who I feel like only didn't actually look as good, or they looked better than they really are because of how the other team played. And I questioned that with the Rams when they played the Vikings. Is this really how good the Rams are, or the Vikings just playing that poorly? That is basically just a gimme win. And I think that's a lot of what the Texans game is. And again, they still put up 32 points, but when they struggled as much as they did, I think that the Chargers kind of just gave that win to you. They just kind of handed it over. And I think the Texans were just kind of there waiting. And again, I think they have a good coach. I think they have a good quarterback, a pretty solid team. But I think that win kind of is just a stat pattern. It kind of just buffs their stock. But I don't think it's really an accurate representation.
We'll revisit this if they do beat the Kansas City Chiefs, though.
That would be interesting.
That would be very interesting. Number 7, I got the Rams.
Yeah, I can see they were kind of in this lower echelon because like we've mentioned that top 5 teams, formerly top 6, but then the Vikings lost. Yeah, so the bottom 3 teams are kind of just not like outside of that top five echelon, where those are all just like the really good like Super Bowl contenders, and then there's these bottom three where it's like these are severe, like these are dark horses, these are your underdogs, where they still could. They're playing like they're good teams. They made it through the gauntlet of the first round, but it was more of a question of like, are you a legit team after your dominating performance, or are you just do you look better because the other team played poorly like the Texans did, or at least how I viewed it, the way the Texans did, where the Vikings played really poorly, but the Rams also played well, and it's just a question of are they actually worthy of that like first round passage, or did they just have kind of a freebie matchup? And that's really the question. So I'll let you go on to six, where I imagine I know who this is.
Yeah, I got the Commanders here. I mean, there was no reason to move them at all. They're just really good. They have a couple spots they need to work on, but for the most part, I like this very explosive, yet I don't know. It's hard to describe them because they can be very efficient, but they can just make random stuff happen out of nowhere where they mess up once, but they can immediately fix it. Whether it's I don't know, like a conversion on fourth down on a fake punt, or something else like that. Commanders have really shocked us this year, making it this far at the very least with a rookie quarterback. It's pretty impressive. So,
Yeah, I think, and I think I actually completely forgot to mention this. I actually have the Commanders at 7 and the Rams at 6 because, and this is purely because I mentioned my stuff about the Rams, and I think their win was a little bit more dominant, and I think they get a little bit more credit, especially the way they've been playing recently. The thing about the
fair.
Commanders is that now it's 5 of their last 6 games have been won at like the last second or in overtime, and I just
In the
don't
red
know
zone.
how to read that because a
Well,
part
you
of
can
that,
kind of attribute it to the Chiefs then,
yeah,
because the Chiefs keep winning on last drives.
it seems like a little bit of luck, a little bit is going their way. But we have the Chiefs who've been doing it, and obviously they're good. So is it the Commanders are just good, or are they getting lucky? But like again, they didn't. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of gripes that I have with the way they played, and I can't get over their inability to convert in the red zone for what was it, 2, 3 straight drives. They couldn't get.
Yep.
They came away with 3 points when they had to give me drives, and it was just. Again, they're playing aggressively. They're playing with house money, so they can kind of play on the aggressive side. But they made that game really close, and he still came away with an upset. I still think the Commanders are a good team, and I think I'm kind of pulling for them. I think they could be a dark horse team, but I have the Rams higher just because I think they gave a little bit more optimism going into this next week. But I don't know. They're kind of a toss-up for me, that 6 and 7.
Sweet. All right. Number 5. I still have the Ravens here.
Gasp.
The horror.
Yeah, I still have the Chiefs here, just because again the teams that are playing above them are playing what seems to just be very complete football. Each team kind of has their own concerns, and the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. And I'm sure after this week they're gonna. I could definitely see them jumping, or if they just continue to play the way that they've been playing all year, make it to the Super Bowl. Like they'll make me look dumb, whatever. But I just don't feel like they, at the very least, deserve a top 4 spot because the other teams are just playing very well, and so
Yeah.
it's a bye week.
That's
Whatever
fair.
teams move around you, but you don't really
You don't
influence anything. So
Yeah. That's kind of the same situation for the Chiefs on my end as well, because I still have them at number 4 as well. bye week. They're still the Chiefs. They're still going to be good regardless. So it's just only a matter of respect to just put them at least in the top 5. Well, this is all kind of going down. So
Yeah. At number 4, I actually have the Eagles, which because this was, it was just a tough instance of where do I put them after that performance, because their defense was lights out. They played so well from beginning to end, defense and special teams, but the offense just didn't seem to show up. Because that was a game that should have been like a major blowout, and it was just a lot closer than it should have been. I feel, and
but I guess my point is from earlier was that we are not giving enough credit to the Packers defense, because that defense is really good. And
it is.
It's just you're not going to put up a lot of points against that kind of defense, especially a passing defense. So that's why it just took forever, and why it seems such a low-scoring game for the most part, because it's just they were good on that front. So
yeah,
it's fair.
It's a case of, again, the other teams have offenses that are moving the ball, and they just provide a little more confidence, in my opinion. Whereas the Eagles, I just like, if you go in next week, you're gonna play good defenses. If you go in next week and you still can't put up points, like if you still struggle to 22, kicking mostly field goals, that's not really going to be something that lasts. It's not a thing that often wins you games, and you have to really manage your team well. But again, their defense was great, and that's why I was also like, I still have them in that like 4-1 range. I just put them at 4 because of the offensive performance. Defense still played super well, and that's why it was kind of a question mark even putting them this low. But I dropped them down here just because of that offensive performance.
That's fair. All right, I guess we can move on to number 3. I got the Lions here. Lions and Chiefs just didn't move because they had the bye week, so I just kind of left them there. They're still really good teams. They're basically gearing up for whatever team that they're going to be facing next, and it's either going to be really pretty for the 1 seeds, or it's going to be really sloppy, or for one or the other, or depends on who you ask, I guess. But yeah, Detroit, I think, is going to get Montgomery back, I believe.
They are they are projected to have Montgomery back for this game, so which is just kind of ridiculous, but yeah,
well, just a little.
At number 3, this is where I have the Ravens. Again, the offense is looking good. You get out to a 21-0 lead, and they kind of just cruised to the rest of the game. But the offense played well, defense 21-0 at half. This is, again, not against a good Steelers team at that point, but I just felt really good about that. Lamar's playing well. Derrick Henry's playing well. They didn't have Zay Flowers. We'll have to see if he comes back around for when they play the Bills. That's kind of just up in the air. But, or at least last I checked it was. But again, they're playing well. Their defense is playing a lot better than it had been earlier in the year. And it's just, can they get the job done? So, and we'll obviously see that next week because we got a good matchup. But solid win.
Fair. Mm-hmm. All right. Number 2, I got the Eagles.
Fair.
I mean, I understand, especially with this last week's performance, but I could kind of attribute that to just, I don't know. I know what the Eagles are capable of. I'm just assuming this is just them going up against a really good defense and not having a whole lot of offense production. So I'm going to give them a pass this 1 week. If they win again, but in a very sloppy way, I'm not going to hold them too much confidence. So we shall see.
Number 2, I still have the Bills here, who played really well against the Broncos. Again, it was mostly that second half where they got really dominant. But they still did pretty well in the first half. Just only came away with a 6-point lead, and it honestly should have been a 3-point lead, but a missed field goal at the end of the half by Lutz, I believe it was.
Yeah,
Kind of kept them at 6, but I mean they dominated the second half though, and a good amount of that game. But it's like they didn't play a complete game. They still played very well and dominated against a team that you know didn't, like we mentioned, doesn't really have the roster to be there right now. But I have the Bills up there just because they played very well, and it's the margin of victory, I think, is what put them over the Ravens. But not enough at 1.
Yeah. And speaking of number 1, I have the Bills. Josh Allen's going to do Josh Allen things. So I'm curious to see how this next week goes. I'm excited for the matchup that we're going to be streaming too, because that will be the Bills and Ravens game. So, I mean, I assume you're going to root for the Ravens, and I will just be devil's advocate and cheer for the Bills. So.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, whoever wins between these two, I'm hoping is the Super Bowl or the AFC representative for the Super Bowl. Because between Texans and Chiefs, honestly. I don't want to. No. But yeah, my number one. Of those two. I have the Lions. I had them there previously, and now that they're getting healthier, they're getting David Montgomery back. They're going to be even scarier, and so I just it's the one case of a team coming off of a bye and me feeling better, me putting them up more, even though I couldn't because they were already at 1. But now they're even higher because now you have David Montgomery back. So, yeah, you get healthier, you get some key pieces back, and yeah, you're going to kind of hold that spot even though the Bills played really well. So, Lions are 1.
All right. Sounds good. Well, that kind of wraps up power rankings and just recap in general. So,
yes.
You got anything to share for the viewers slash listeners?
I got a dog who wants to say hello. Hello. But thank you all so much for watching. We're very thankful for everyone who has been supporting us all throughout this year. We're almost at the end of this season, and can't wait to see its exciting finale and get on to the off season and get ready for next season too. So appreciate everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Y'all are a blessing.
Are very grateful. So
we are indeed.
We will catch you next time.
See ya.
Bye.